If you're going to name a car after a legendary plane of the 20th century, you better hope it's going to be something special. But when I drove the Rafale Hybrid back in summer, I didn't think it lived up to expectations. But this is a 300 horsepower producing Rafale Plug-in Hybrid, and Renault's calling it the world's first super hybrid car. So, is this the Rafale model that lives up to that namesake, or is it about to nosedive into obscurity? So we've come to one of the highest points on the old Tour de France route to see whether this is a Renault that can really rival the BMW X4 and Mercedes GLC, and well, to figure out what even is a super hybrid. I mean, it almost feels unfair to compare this Rafale with those German rivals because it gets so much more standard technology. This is a hybrid car with 2 electric motors, one on each axle. And even looking at the paperwork, it's clear to see that it just gives you so much more power for your pounds. I mean, take for example the plug-in hybrid GLC. That is a car that costs £65,000. That's 15 grand more than even the top grade car we have here. And then there's the BMW X4, which doesn't even come with a petrol plug-in hybrid. You have to get diesels, and well, diesels are about as fashionable as trainer socks these days. And yes, I know you can get a Peugeot 408 GT, which looks just as cool and has a hybrid setup, but that is a car that costs the same as this one, but it has way less power. And on paper, the entry-level car has 560 miles per gallon, and even this higher grade trim is capable of 400 miles per gallon. So how the heck have they achieved that? Well, of course, firstly, they've put it through a slightly outdated testing process known as WLTP, but secondly, they have also given this car a heck of a lot of technology. Firstly, under the bonnet, we've got a 3-cylinder engine with a starter generator producing 150 horsepower, and then it works alongside at the front here, another electric motor, but this is 70 horsepower. And then at the back, we've got our second proper electric motor. This one has 100 horses, and it, along with that one, is powered by a 22 kilowatt hour battery with 400 volts, placed really low in the car's floor. And the engineers tell us that is going to be great for handling because it keeps the center of gravity really low. And we'll test that out in a moment. But before that, I've got to tell you about something just as interesting, which is that a dozen Alpine engineers have actually done work on this car's suspension setup. So they have tuned the damping and even set up the camera tech it uses to evaluate the road surface ahead. So apparently, when this comes up to a bumpy road, it will soften the suspension off. But when you want to hammer along a twisty country lane, well, then it firms up and gives you proper Alpine handling. So that should mean that unlike Alpine badged Clios, this Atelier Alpine Rafale is more than just a cosmetic job. Although for this to be a true performance coupe SUV, it has to look the part. And while yes, this Rafale looks much like the normal hybrid car, it does get a few special upgrades, including this entirely fake but now black front grille, and around the side, on this top grade Atelier trim, you get 21-inch wheels wrapped in Continental summer tyres. If you want to go for an all-season tyre, you'll have to go for the lower Techno Esprit Alpine, which comes on 20s, and then you've got the option to switch up your rubber. But if you want the more fetching satin blue paint, that really lovely Alpine colour, well, you're going to have to go for this top one here. And at the back, yes, it's a relatively familiar affair because it looks very similar to the hybrid, but don't forget this plug-in hybrid has gained a battery in the floor, which means when you've got this swooping and very fashionable coupe SUV roofline, we potentially now have a pinched rear cabin space. So we're gonna have to test in a minute to see whether that's actually impeded headroom. But as far as design on the outside, well, it's very similar. You just simply have gained this port here for your charger. On the other side is where you fill up with fuel. This is the side where the plug goes. And while at the back here, yes, it does look quite similar to the regular hybrid Rafale, but this plug-in hybrid still has all the aggression you want, like these smoked tail lights and this sharp leading edge here. Plus, if you go for the blue color, well then you also get a black roof spoiler, which really looks the part. Now, because this is a car named after an aeroplane, of course, Renault has taken inspiration from the world of aviation when designing its cockpit. And also, this is how you accelerate in the Rafale. No, I'm just kidding, that's the armrest. Of course, the controls are pretty conventional, but the ergonomics are very, very good in Renault's latest gen stuff. I mean, these screens are brilliant. We've got a portrait one here running Google software, so it's fast, it's sharp, and it looks nice. And we've got this one ahead of me here, which looks great. The graphics are really cool. And also, you get buttons where you need them, so the climate control is easily used on the move, it's tactile, and you're not pressing the wrong things. The one thing I will mark this car down for though when it comes to the tech are the reversing cameras. You've got a 360 view, which is very helpful, and you've got front and rear cameras, but the resolution is pretty low by 2024 standards. But at least they haven't gone too far with the tech by giving us touch sensitive buttons on the steering wheel. We've got proper buttons up here, so it's all super easy to use. And of course, this is a big car, so you'd expect big storage, and well, the Rafale does deliver. You've got door pockets that are generous, you've got a proper sized glove box with a button as well, not some switch hidden away in the infotainment menu. And you've even got, if I move the throttle here to cover the 2 cup holders, you've even got a bit of storage down there as well. Plus, there's more in there, and this is quite generous. So storage-wise, things are really good. And actually, in terms of aesthetics and comfort, well, they also feel pretty good. These seats, these Alpine seats, firstly, they look great because I love the blue dotted pattern they have, which is a throwback to a Renault Sport design, actually. And you also get illuminated Alpine logos as well, which look great in the dark. And they're firmly cushioned, so you might think they're uncomfortable, but they're so supportive. They do really push you in the right places. So it does feel right for this package. No less helpful in the Rafale is a second central mirror, but this one has a 180-degree view of the back seats, so you can keep an eye on the kids or adults to make sure they're not messing around. Now, climbing into the back of the Rafale, just like the regular hybrid, is no issue because even though you've got a swoopy roofline, there's still actually a good amount of space. And in fact, it feels really spacious when you sit in the back here because you've got this high roofline and then you've also got the solar bay above, which really gives you that airy feel. And that's despite the fact this car has tinted windows all round. It still feels really airy and spacious in here. Although I have to admit, I have noticed this plug-in hybrid car with its battery in the floor has a little bit less in the way of footroom, and that's because the floor has lifted a small amount. Now, there is still a generous amount of room, plenty of knee room, and of course, most people won't have their seats like I have set all the way to the floor, so you'll be able to tuck your toes under, but it is just worth noting that there is a small amount of reduction when it comes to footroom in here. But I have to say, the seat space is great, and even the middle seat looks very generous indeed. But if you don't have someone sat in the middle, well then, you're in for a treat, especially if you're a kid, because you can lower this down here and then suddenly you've got a whole world of fun to play with, because if you lift this up, you've got 2 USB-C ports, and there are 2 in the front as well for mum and dad, as well as a wireless charger, but these are for the kiddies in the back. And then you've got these weird systems here. So if you fold these out, you've got a pair of cup holders, but then you've also got a place which looks like the sort of place you'd rest your phone, but it's pretty snug. My phone won't fit, but Jamil has this swanky and much more slender phone, which does fit very well indeed. And actually, this gives me an opportunity to show you that if you must have a BMW X4, you cannot let go of having that beamer. Well, if you go onto Cinch and download our app or visit our website, you can find X4s on there just as lovely as that for less than a Rafale. Not bad at all, eh? But of course, if you're not playing with your phone and you just want to live in this car, it's good to note how much toys and how much space you've got. And if you fold this away, you can also, just at the pull of this lever, God, he says, lower this down and have a ski hatch as well. So if you take this car on your ski trip, well, they can be poking through here. And handily, Renault has actually equipped this car with a snow mode as well. But before we test that stuff out, let's see what the boot's like. Now, here's another reason why you should go for this top grade Atelier Alpine over the lower spec Alpine Esprit Rafale. And that is because you get a powered tailgate. And well, now this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you that the plug-in hybrid loses a load of boot space because of some electric stuff and everything's gone to pot. But well, yes, technically it has lost a bit of boot space compared to the regular hybrid, because where that car had underfloor storage, now we don't have any, aside from just about enough room to hide away your charge cable, which is handy. But actually, there's a really interesting discovery we've made just now, and that is that this boot not only is on par with the non-hybrid BMW X4, but it is considerably larger than the plug-in hybrid equivalent from Mercedes in the GLC. So this is a generously sized plug-in boot. And that can be illustrated with Jamil's cabin carry-on bag, the biggest bag you can take onto an aeroplane into where you sit down. And well, we think you can get 4 of these across here, 3 there and 1 there. So this is a good space, and you get a little bit more, albeit with the swoopy roofline on top of this 2-part parcel shelf as well. So as far as the sensible stuff is concerned, and as far as the stuff on paper is concerned, this seems brilliant. So where is the Rafale plug-in hybrid's compromise? There has to be one, surely. So we have 2 key things to test in this Rafale 300 horsepower car. Firstly, has the Alpine suspension with its advanced setup made it ride better than the quite fidgety hybrid? And secondly, does it drive like a performance brand car should do? Does it handle? And is it exciting? Now I'm beginning in fully electric mode because this car, with its 65-mile capable range, well, this is the way you're going to drive the car in a slower or urban setting. So I want to feel what it's like. Does it feel quick enough to deal with an urban journey and maybe even onto a dual carriageway? Well, yeah, it does. It's actually quite nippy because you've got 160 horsepower just in electric mode. And so you've got a smooth delivery and a useful amount of power as well. This is definitely capable of carrying you around just in electric mode. But what I really want to test is, does it feel refined in this mode? Because now we have no engine sound. I want to know, does the suspension feel jittery like it did in the hybrid? And well, I have to admit, even in this comfort setting here, there is still a noticeable amount of fidgetiness over the smaller bumps. If you've got ruts and cambers and little cracks in the road, they just come into the cabin and into your seat as well. It is only when you go over the slightly bigger bumps that the suspension then feels like it compresses a lot more. And I think that's because while this car has a very clever suspension system with that camera we talked about earlier, well, it still has conventional springs. It doesn't have air suspension, so it can't really soften off. But that setup does provide one key advantage, and I'll talk about that when we get on the right roads to demonstrate it. But before we do that, let's click into hybrid mode just to see how seamless this powertrain is. Now, the button for the hybrid setting is down here, and really, initially, you don't notice any difference at all because, well, firstly, the electric motor still continues to be the dominant force at low speed. So even if I were to accelerate hard out of this corner, my initial shove is electric. It isn't until we then pick up and get over 80 kilometers an hour here on this fast road that then the petrol engine kicks in. Ooh, that rolling acceleration is really strong. That is definitely where this car's strongest muscle lives. It's in the mid-range. It's where you're already moving and you accelerate hard and both petrol engine and electric work together. Because off the line, this is a quick car. It will hit 62 miles per hour in under 6.5 seconds. That is hot hatch quick. But it's the muscle when you're rolling off. So if you're powering onto a motorway, for example, off of a slip road, that's when you're gonna get a really big grin on your face. Whew. Oh, that is quick. Of course, having this complicated hybrid setup does have other advantages as well. Now, the first, of course, is the efficiency of this thing. Now, 65 miles in purely electric mode means when this car does its tests, its WLTP testing, they reckon it can get 564 miles per gallon combined. But of course, in the real world, it's going to be a lot different, isn't it? Because you're not going to be driving around like a robot. But yet, I can confirm that on our drive today, we've been in the car now for, I don't know, more than half an hour, and the engine has barely been on. It's only been on during the most exuberant moments when I really put my foot down. And because we have such an effective regen on this car, which can be adjusted with the paddles on the steering wheel here, it can be turned up, so it's really aggressive, so I don't really need to brake on this downhill route, and it captures all of the energy, or a lot of the energy. It means the battery usage is minimal. I mean, it's saying we've got 78 kilometers left, and when we left, we had 90 kilometers, so I've used 12 kilometers in what feels like 30 plus kilometers of driving, so it is a really efficient setup, and I can confirm that on the real world, although it does help out here in Nice that we've got some hilly routes and I can go down the hills and really recharge that battery. It means really as a driver, it feels very much like you're driving an electric car. And I mean that in a good way because it's all of the effort reducing stuff you get in an EV with all of the performance and excitement you get as well. But this Rafale doesn't earn its Alpine stripes for just being a hybrid, because don't forget, actual Alpine engineers have fine-tuned its suspension for handling too. So we have come to an appropriate setting, which is a very twisty Nice road, to see just how that Alpine tuning affects this Rafale. Let's hammer it into this corner here. I'm in sport mode. There is really good body control. And actually, you can feel the electric torque just shoving you through the corner. It feels more front biased in the power deliveries. I'm not getting a kick from the rear axle with the electric. Instead, I'm getting scrabbling on the front. It pulls more like a front wheel drive car, but just one with loads of grip. But the body control is very good, I have to admit. Alpine, I mean, they know what they're doing when it comes to car handling, but their expertise is on the lighter stuff. This isn't light, and yet it really does go around corners with complete composure and complete control. Am I having a lot of fun while I'm doing it though? Well, isn't it? The steering is quite nice, so it is quite enjoyable to thread it through these lanes. And because I've got the confidence that the body's not going to roll around, yeah, it is quite enjoyable. But I just wish I had a bit more torque going to the rear axle so I could play with it. So this is the sort of car you can enjoy corners with, but it is also not quite the car you're going to take the long route home in. I think it handles really well and it's enjoyable, but it feels more natural in other environments. That, I think, goes some way to explaining why Renault has chosen to call its 300 horsepower Rafale a super hybrid rather than an outright super SUV. true super SUVs like the Porsche Macan Turbo or Alfa Stelvio Quadrifoglio excite with kicks of oversteer and immense straight-line speed. By contrast, the Rafale leaves you more impressed with its ability to efficiently soak up unwanted energy as you hammer towards a bend and maintain the rest of it with strong grip and composure. It makes being efficient fun. So to me, Renault's claim of this being the first super hybrid does sort of make sense. And of course, the beauty of this car being a plug-in hybrid is that, well, when you come off of those twisty roads and you find yourself back in an urban setting, well, it's simply a case of clicking the multi-sense button on your steering wheel and letting the car drop back into its comfort mode. And doing that really completely changes it, because then suddenly you're back in EV mode. Suddenly it's much more relaxed. Yes, it is still a bit fidgety, and that's definitely this car's Achilles heel. But as far as driving it is concerned, well, now I'm just driving around in a nice, chilled electric car. So after a brilliant start, the Rafale Plug-in Hybrid didn't quite hit the spot when it came to ride. And well, yeah, that WLTP figure is definitely a little bit misleading, but actually I have to admit, this is super efficient when it comes to hybrid power. And actually, in our drive back from the mountain to here, the engine didn't come on once. And I shouldn't be surprised by that, because Renault's on a bit of a roll at the moment when it comes to electrification. And well, this Renault 5 is another brilliant example of battery power Renault. And actually, you shouldn't just take my word for it, you should take Ben's by watching this video here.